Hello and welcome everyone to the Varsity Tutors StarCourse series, where I think we're all pretty amazed these days by what we're seeing from the Mars Perseverance rover every day, inspiring us with the necessary perseverance to get through our own math homework and science tests and all those things that we know are going to pay off because this is the generation that's going to Mars. And that's why we're so excited to have Alyssa Carson here with us. I may not be, you can see the gray hair, part of the generation that's going to Mars, but you guys definitely are. And Alyssa is the preeminent member of the Mars generation. She's shown plenty of perseverance. She's attended every NASA space camp and graduated from Possum NASA Astronaut Training Academy all before she turned 20. And she's here to talk to us about all the things that have gone right in space exploration history and a few that have gone wrong to get us on the verge of sending some of you to Mars someday soon. Now, before I turn it over to Alyssa, I've got a few messages from Mission Control here to make sure that you get as much out of today's session as possible. One, communication is key. There is always a mission control for every one of these missions. So use the chat panel to the right of the screen. Alyssa's going to ask you some questions to find out what you know about space and where you want to go in space. And so you can answer those there. Also, any questions you have throughout the session, don't wait to be called on. Just type those in that chat there. And in the last 10 minutes or so of class, I am going to interview Alyssa with your questions to get you as many answers as we can. Also, make sure you've got a camera nearby. She's actually going to talk to you about where your digital camera came from in just a little bit. In about a half an hour, we're going to give everybody an opportunity to lean into the screen, get a selfie with Alyssa, and if you upload that to Instagram, tag Alyssa under her code name of NASA Blueberry and tag Varsity Tutors, you'll be entered to win a place in our space camp at Varsity Tutors this summer and a telescope so you can start exploring all those amazing space places in space pretty soon. All right, we've got about T-10 until class starts. So last thing left for me to do as I am a booster rocket and we'll drop off and let her take you into orbit is introduce you to your teacher for today, NASA Blueberry herself, Alyssa Carson.
Yeah, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. I am super excited to have all of you guys joining me, really just coming to hang out and learn a lot about space. We're really gonna cover all the fun that there is to do with space. Like I said, we're really just covering everything that's happened in space. I want to teach you guys everything that we have done in space, all the successes, a few funny moments, and really just have you learn kind of all the basics to kind of figure out what we can do next and where we can go from here. But yeah, we're just going to cover really what we've done and what is really cool about space, because there definitely is going to be a lot. I can assure you guys of that. So let's get into it, I would say. So I want to start off the session with a question for you guys. So start typing in the chat. But our first question is going to be, which of these is not an invention made possible by the space program? So you can see your, I guess, what are they? Options on the screen. So we have camera phones, wireless headphones, handheld vacuum, Nike Air shoes, and Velcro. So type in like the letter you think it is. Let's see. I'm going to start looking at them. See if you these. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of suspense while you try to guess the answers, seeing what you guys are putting. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the answer now that a few of you have given a little bit of time to think about it. So the answer here is actually Velcro. So a lot of people assume Velcro was made for space. So space kind of popularized Velcro. We use Velcro, of course, in space. It's right here on my sleeve. We use Velcro all the time in space, but it wasn't directly made for the purpose of space. Whereas like some of these other things like camera phones, wireless headphones, a lot of the technology in all these other items that we see on the screen, we had to have space travel to start thinking of these things. Really, the awesome part about space is that it forces us to think outside the box. So that way we are really able to come up with new inventions, learn new things. And then, yeah, we totally use all of those things that we come up with right back here on Earth. So that's why whenever we say we use something that was made for space pretty much every day, I'm sure you guys probably use a cell phone or headphones or things like that every day. Space is all around us all the time. And that's something that's really cool about it. So we can get in a little bit about how space has started and where it's really all coming from. So something that I like to say is, as humans, we are naturally explorers. We are always curious. We always want to explore. We explore so much of the earth, and it's kind of always been that way with space. Even way back when we were using telescopes because we are curious about space, we wanted to learn more about space. And that has really led to us not only wanting to learn more, but also gain stuff from space. There's a whole lot of reasons why we go to space and why space is important. It's, of course, to say we've been to space, and also to learn a lot of cool science, but also at the same time, space is really big just because, first of all, learning a lot of like where we came from, a lot about who we are, learning about Earth in general. But also gaining the science and all the benefits that we kind of just talked about. That's the really big thing about space, is that it's always giving back here to Earth. And so that's really one of the big things that we are super excited about with space, is because we get so much out of it. So they kind of saw that in the early days. We wanted to really figure out, where are we, what are we doing? Now we use space for more of a practical use, being able to do science, learn more about space, be more involved in space, not only just kind of in space in general, but other planets as well. We're able to do so much more now, and even look super far in the universe. We have those technologies now. And so that's really what I've always been interested in. That's why I got interested in space. I had just this curiosity of, what's on Mars? What is there? No one's been there before. Why not be curious about it? And so that's really what drew my interest. And pretty much for me, the more I've learned about space, the more I've wanted to do something within the space industry. And so that's definitely the cool part about it, is that there's always something else to learn. And we're always learning in space because we're pretty much the tiniest little dot there could be. So yeah, that's really kind of what my dream has been all about. And hopefully I can share a little bit of that passion with you guys as we go through some of the stories here. So let's see. So my next question that I want to ask you guys, now that we're coming up on the very beginning of what we start doing in the industry, is what type of animal was the first to go to space? So I'll give you guys a couple minutes, think about it. What are the animals that have gone to space, or the first animal to go to space? Let's see. Monkeys is on there. Let's see, a few of you have mentioned dog. Yeah, so I mean, obviously a lot of really amazing guesses coming in. You guys are so interactive. I love it. Yeah, so talking a little bit about animals in space. I'm sure some of you may know about Laika, which was the dog that Russia sent up as kind of like the first animal in space. Fruit flies are kind of the first animal a little bit. We actually threw some fruit flies and a few things that initially went to space. I kind of count the fruit flies, kind of don't. Kind of depends on your opinion. So I guess the technical answer would be fruit flies. I kind of like to think of Laika as the first animal in space, but we all kind of have our fair share. So pretty much at this time, there was pretty much a space race going on. So this is kind of going to the beginning of space travel. We've studied the stars, we've looked at space, we want to do stuff with it. We want to get there. And so really we had this space race going on. The US and Russia had a competition. We were just trying to beat each other to space pretty much. And so that really first started with satellites, very just simple things, just chunks of metal, trying to launch it up into space. But then, of course, we wanted to switch to human, which is why we sent animals first before we actually sent humans. So Russia sent up a dog. Her name was Laika. Laika was actually a stray female dog that they found on the street. And, she became a pup astronaut. So that's kind of a change of life story, but she was definitely pretty cool to be able to do that. So in return to that, the US decided that we were going to send 2 monkeys. So the first animals that the US sent to space were actually 2 monkeys named Abel and Baker. They were spider monkeys, and they became our first animal astronauts to go to space, and Abel and Baker had a successful mission. They came back, lived their happy little monkey lives. And so that was kind of, us getting a little bit into sending animals to space. And so that was kind of a way for us to figure out, is it safe? What can we do with space? How were they exposed? Were there any consequences? And so the US actually continued using monkeys for a little while, actually. So we started using like chimpanzees and stuff like that. We actually trained the monkeys. So the monkeys that were sent to space, they weren't just strapped in, they were full on trained, practically astronauts. They were actually trained using this system that they were told which buttons to press. And if they got the right button right, then they were given a banana chip. But if they pressed the wrong button, they had a little shock. So it wouldn't hurt them. It just wasn't as nice as a banana chip. So they kind of did that process over and over again until the monkeys actually learned the pattern, and they were pretty much not flying the rocket, but they were pretty much doing a whole lot of work and getting the rocket to space. So that was really, really cool that we were able to do that. And once we were satisfied with monkeys and we were like, man, these monkey astronauts are really killing it, we decided to kind of switch to the Mercury program, which was our first official space program here in the US. And so again, we're in this space race. It's a competition. We're trying to beat Russia. Russia's trying to beat us. Really intense. Russia, of course, ended up sending the first man to space. His name was Yuri Gagarin, and he was very successful. Not only did Yuri Gagarin become the first man, but he actually went up, orbited, and came down. So he did a lot of firsts in that first flight. So he was very successful in his mission. But then it came to us. We had to bounce back. We had to send someone to space. So our first American astronaut is astronaut Alan Shepard. Brave guy for doing that, being the first. And we're going to go a little bit in a quick funny story about Alan Shepard because he has a pretty interesting first mission. So pretty much as you guys could imagine, I would be pretty nervous to be the first American ever sent to space, right? I'm sure you guys would be to be, the first man they send up. So Alan Shepard, he was nervous. Of course he was. So he woke up that morning of his flight. He starts drinking coffee. He sits down, has breakfast, has another cup of coffee, trying to ease those nerves, keeps getting coffee. So the spacesuits that they put them in, it takes a few hours to strap them into the rocket. So he gets strapped up in the rocket. And to kind of give you an idea, when they're sitting in these rockets, they're laying down on their backs. They got their legs up in the air. They're laying on their backs, and he's just sitting there for hours. They're trying to make sure everything's ready to send our first American astronaut into space. It's a really big deal. So once he's sitting there for a few hours, he finally realizes, hey, I haven't gone to the bathroom yet today. He just kind of forgot that step. And so he calls mission control, everything kind of comes back to mission control, talking to Capcom, who he talks to in mission control. Is like, hey, I gotta go. And they're like, yeah, we know you gotta go. We're glad to hear the excitement. We're glad you're excited to go to space. And he's like, no, I have to go to the bathroom. So they were like, oh, it's too much of a hassle. To give you an idea, his flight was only gonna be 15 minutes, up, down, pretty successful. So they had to wait a little while. He pretty much never got the opportunity to come out of the rocket and go to the bathroom. It would just take too much work to unstrap him, get him out the suit, go to the bathroom, and put him back in. So he had to go in his suit. And so he ended up going to the bathroom in his suit. Then he had the amazing job of being the first astronaut in space. But sadly, one thing to remember is once you get to space, key factor is everything floats in space. So in his spacesuit, all of that floated all up, all over him. Quite the mess. He came back. He was a little soggy, but eventually was our first American astronaut. And so we have to be really proud and successful of that. We, of course, continued with space travel, kept sending more astronauts to space, and we started learning more about space. And to kind of give you an idea, after the first astronaut we sent to space, we were already looking at the moon. Again, going back to the space race idea, everything was at a pretty rapid pace, but we were already looking at going to the moon. So after we sent the first man was, as some of you may know, famous speech, we will choose to go to the moon. And that's kind of, we had to kick it into gear and figure out how we were actually going to get there. So that is really how we started space. And moving on to that, let's talk about going to the moon. So like I said, we wanted to get there, but let's have a quick question about the moon first. So why don't you guys go ahead and type what the first thing Neil Armstrong said to Mission Control when the lunar lander touched ground on the moon? So I feel like there's a little bit of tricky wording in this question. Let's see if some of you guys get it. So what Neil Armstrong said when the lunar lander touched ground on the moon. Let's see some of your guys' answers. Let's see, I love seeing them come in. Yeah, so there's a few, the one small step, of course. That's a pretty famous line. All right, so kind of the trick here a little bit with this question is we're talking about when the lunar lander got landed on the moon. So not when Neil Armstrong himself walked on the moon, but when the lander touched on the moon. And so actually his first words to Mission Control was "the Eagle has landed." The nickname for their lander that they gave it was the Eagle. Basically, he was just telling them that they had successfully landed on the moon and that everything went well. They were there. That was their nickname. It's what they chose to be the Eagle. And so that was really the first thing he said. Of course, his most famous line, more popular than the Eagle has landed, was when he took his first step on the moon and actually started walking on the moon's surface. But really kind of preparing to go to the moon, what really happened was, we had our Mercury program. We sent people to space. Hoorah, we did that, but now we had to figure out what was next. So really our next step was going to the Gemini program. Gemini means two. We started sending 2 astronauts at a time. So during Mercury, it was 1 guy at a time. Gemini, 2 people at a time. And pretty much the entire point of Gemini, we had 2 main goals, which was pretty much learning as much as we could about space as fast as we could. And then we also had a goal of landing on land, which we never actually ended up doing. So during all of these missions, how they worked was the astronauts were in capsules. They were up on the rocket. They hung out in the capsule. When they came back, they crash landed. It's meant to be called a crash landing. They crash landed in the ocean. They were eventually rescued. So that's kind of what we did for Gemini as well. And yeah, really the entire Gemini program actually only lasted a year. So they did about 10 Gemini missions in 1 year. So that can kind of give you an idea of how sped up this process was. Because again, we have only sent maybe a few astronauts up into space with Mercury. We only have a few guys who have ever done it. So we really want to get a few things worked out before we try to go to the moon. And we also all at the same time have Russia beating us with everything. They're being very successful. They're making a lot of accomplishments. And so that's really why we had to kind of speed up that Gemini program. Everything within Gemini was very successful. We learned a lot. We gained a lot of knowledge. And that's kind of how we were able to move on to the Apollo program, which is, of course, what eventually sent us to the moon. Apollo, we had another little change. The capsules were a little bit bigger. We now decided we wanted to send 3 astronauts to space instead of 2. So that was kind of the whole idea of the Apollo mission. So for the Apollo flight, pretty much in general, the Apollo program started off on a pretty rocky start. We came off of a lot of success from Gemini, but within Apollo, it really wasn't going too well. We were just having a lot of problems with the capsule, with just different systems that just weren't working right. And so within Apollo, we had to kind of take a little step back, reevaluate, make sure everything we were doing was going to be safe, because we were trying to make sure every single astronaut would be safe. And so we had to take a moment, remember what we were doing. And so Apollo, like 1, 2, all of those initial ones were pretty much not really like actual flights. A lot of them were tests. And so it wasn't really until Apollo 8 that we started putting astronauts back into the capsule. So for Apollo 8, 9, and 10, those were all manned. They had people in them, but they didn't go to the moon. So all of them got slightly closer to the moon. So actually Apollo 10 actually went all the way to the moon. They were right there. They were looking at it. They wanted to land. They were asking Mission Control to land, but they didn't have enough fuel to land on the moon because they weren't planning on landing on the moon. And so that was kind of a bit of a bummer for them. But once Apollo 10 was a complete success, we wanted Apollo 11 to be the mission that is going to land on the moon, which of course was Michael Collins, Alan Shepard, and Buzz Aldrin. And so that was our first crew to go to the moon. So of course, Apollo 11 was a really successful mission. To kind of give you guys an idea how the missions worked, to get to the moon, it usually takes 3 to 4 days. So the astronauts traveled to the moon, then pretty much Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin separated from Michael Collins, and they went into the lander, which then separated, went down to the surface of the moon. And that's kind of why we have 3 astronauts. One guy stays behind, he orbits the moon, while the other 2 guys go down to the surface and do some science and have some fun. And really, astronauts had loads of fun on the moon. Of course, they did science and we gained a lot of really amazing knowledge from it. But honestly, astronauts just have loads of fun in general. So actually, a lot of people asked Michael Collins, the guy who got left behind, oh, like, were you upset that you didn't get to go down to the moon? And he always said, he spent, 3, 4, 5 days crammed in a tiny capsule with 2 other grown men. And he was so excited for them to get out and him to just have the whole capsule to himself. So it was very roomy. He definitely enjoyed his few days without the other 2. But of course, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin had a lot of success. They stepped foot on the moon. And we continued going to the moon from that. Apollo 12, another very successful mission to the moon. Apollo 13 has a little bit of a rocky story. It's a successful failure. They didn't land, but they still made it back successfully. Apollo 14, 15, 16, and 17 all went to the moon, had amazing landings and a lot of success. So we have had 6 official moon landings and missions to have landed and conducted research on the moon. To kind of give you guys an idea of some of the fun stuff we did, we have had Moon Olympics. So we had a crew have some fun where they wanted to compete to see who could do the best stuff. This was specifically astronaut Charlie Duke. He was convinced he could jump the highest on the moon. So those were the types of competitions they had. So he jumped. Of course, there's still gravity on the moon, just not as much. There's 1/6 the gravity. So his life support, which is right here on his back, is a little bit heavier than he is. So when he was coming down, he leaned backwards, landed on his life support. Luckily, his life support was totally fine. He was fine, but he couldn't get up. He was stuck. His legs were kicking in the air, so he got nicknamed Turtle. We have played golf on the moon. We had astronauts bring golf clubs, golf balls. We also have had a little race car moonlander race on the moon. So we had 2 of the moon missions actually bring lunar landers. So they were pretty much like our lunar rovers, I guess I should say, lunar cars. They were pretty much little vehicles that the astronauts could use to travel further, do a little bit more science on the moon. However, we can't bring those back with us just because they're too big. We kind of left those on the moon. So once we brought the second one, there were 2 astronauts and 2 little moon cars. So what did they do? They had to have a race because astronauts are just so much fun. And so they had a little race on the moon and they got to see who was the fastest. I think the highest speed they got up to was 3-5 miles an hour. The vehicles did not go fast at all, but they thought they were so cool, which, they kind of were. But that kind of leads a little bit into, we had a lot of success in going to the moon, and that's why we're looking at going back to the moon. So that's really kind of something that we're looking to right now. We have plans of going back to the moon with the brand new Artemis program. The plan is to start sending people back to the moon by the late 2020s. So the goal really, 1, to go back to the moon, also to send the first woman to the moon. And that's really the whole idea of Artemis, Apollo. Artemis is the sister of Apollo. So that's kind of why it's the idea of sending a woman to the moon. And to kind of progress in our timeline of space here, we are now looking at what would we want to do next. And the reason why we kind of stopped sending people to the moon is really because the public lost a little bit of interest in it. And so we really can't do much in space without public interest. And so, the public really were like, yeah, we've been to the moon. What's next? And so that's why we had to do something new in space. And so that is why we move on to the next thing, which is going to be living in space. That was the next goal that we wanted to succeed at. So another question for you guys. There's no right or wrong answer here, but what is the hardest thing about living in space? What is the hardest thing you can think about? What do the astronauts struggle to do or hate doing? Go ahead and type those in and let's see the hardest thing about space. Let's see, sleeping. Let's see, hardest thing about living in space. Again, there's no right answer. I will also think about what I think the hardest thing about living in space is. Definitely keep in mind, let's see, a few bathrooms. A lot of stuff does come back to the bathroom in space. The bathroom's very fun in space. Just keep that in mind. But yeah, I love all of your guys' responses that are coming in. Like I said, there's no right answer here, but it's really fun to kind of think about some of the hard things that there are to do in space. Kind of what I like about this question and something that's really fun is try to think how you get ready for the morning. Like, let's say you're getting ready to go to school. What is everything that you're going to do? Maybe take a shower, brush your teeth, comb your hair, whatever it is, go to the bathroom, get dressed. Now, how would you do that if everything around you was floating? How would you just go about that? How would you do all of those things? The water's floating, you're brushing your teeth, you spit in the sink, it just floats in front of your face. How do you go about those situations? And that was really what we wanted to learn. That's why we wanted to live in space. We wanted to figure these things out. And so that is kind of why we created the Skylab program. And so Skylab was really all about living and working in space. And this was really just for us to figure those things out. So for Skylab, we had, crews of astronauts go up. It was more of like a temporary station in space for us to go and live and work in space. Astronauts typically stayed up here for like 3 months at a time, maybe a little bit longer, 3-4 months, but they were there to really learn about space. So we were trying to figure out, how do you take a shower in space? How do you really go to the bathroom in space? Obviously, we've covered going to the bathroom. Alan Shepard did in his pants. That's probably not what we want to do for 3 months. So, how are we going to figure out how to use something maybe a little bit cleaner, maybe a little bit better? And so that's really the whole point of living and working in space. And so really a lot of what Skylab did was do a lot of tests. A few things that they did, figuring out how we shower in space. Skylab actually, they sent up what we thought, would be a good working shower in space. It had a little curtain to cover you up, and we had a little water hose, and you would squirt some water on your skin, squirt some soap, rub it in, and then we had like a little hand vacuum to like suck the water off. Water in space, when it sticks to you, it sticks to you. So you have to like physically like brush it off to get it off of your skin. It doesn't just like fall off like it does here on Earth. And so astronauts actually were taking 2 to 3 hours just to shower, trying to get all that water off of their skin. So we realized that doesn't work. So a lot of the things that we figured out, pretty much astronauts will use dry shampoo. They'll just like rub it into their hair really good. We really clean ourselves really with like baby wipes, nothing too complex. Also, we don't really get that dirty in space if you really think about it. We aren't rolling around in mud. We're just floating about in air. So it's a little bit cleaner up there anyway, but pretty much we just use baby wipes to freshen up. To brush our teeth, the astronauts have multiple options. We actually send up baby toothpaste for astronauts so they can actually swallow it. It's safe for them to swallow, or you can spit it in a rag. We've also learned how to like cut hair in space, and a lot about exercise in space. Something really important to keep in mind is when you are in microgravity, keeping a good exercise routine is really, really important. And the reason for that is a lot of you are probably just sitting in a chair right now, really relaxed, really cozy. Probably doesn't feel like you're exercising right now, but actually your muscles and your bones are still working very hard, even if you are relaxed. And that is because we still have gravity pushing us down all day, every day. And so your muscles and your bones have built up this strength to fight against that so we can feel comfortable. But when we go to space, we no longer have that pressure pushing down on us. So in that sense, your muscles and your bones are like, I don't really need to be as strong. I don't need to work as hard because there's nothing pushing down on me. So our muscles and our bones get weaker. We get weaker when we are in space. And so astronauts typically have to exercise for 1.5 hours to 2 hours every day to keep our muscles active. So of course we had to invent and come up with things that we could do. Obviously you can't do a push-up in space because you aren't using your muscles, you're floating. It's super easy to do that. You have nothing pushing down on you. So we used a lot of resistance bands. We actually came up with our own version of a treadmill to actually strap you down to the treadmill to actually work your muscles and do a lot of good work. And so we had to come up with a lot of this stuff. And that's really the whole point of Skylab, was we were trying to figure these things out to make sure astronauts who were living in space were staying healthy. And that's kind of how we shifted to the space shuttle program, which obviously was a massive program. We had a lot of amazing astronauts, but once we saw what happened with Skylab, we were like, we want something more permanent. And so we wanted to build an international space station. We wanted a space station that would be in low Earth orbit that we could go to whenever we wanted to do science and to learn more. And so really the space shuttle program did a whole lot. Not only did it build the International Space Station, but it also launched so many telescopes and satellites and repaired telescopes. And it was really an amazing program. So a little bit about the space shuttle program. We had a total of 135 missions, which was absolutely insane. The space shuttle program was really the first time we started landing on land, kind of going back to that idea that we had back in Gemini, and then also really using more reusability. So we started wanting to reuse components of rockets more. Typically when in the early days with the rockets, they would either burn up in the atmosphere, we would crash land them in the ocean, there really wasn't a lot of reusability. And we wanted to see that with the space shuttle program. So the space shuttle itself is kind of divided into 4 major parts. So there is the ET, external tank, and that's the big orange tube you see in kind of like the back a little bit. And that's pretty much where all the fuel is held. Then on top of the external tank is the orbiter. And so that's actually the part that comes back and lands with the astronauts. The astronauts themselves are only at the tippy top of that orbiter. So the actual like airplane looking thing, the very, very top of that is the only spot the astronauts can actually be. So that is the second part. The orbiter, that's actually what stays in space. That's where the astronauts were staying. Next component is the SRBs, solid rocket boosters. Those are the 2 little rocket boosters on the side. There are 2 of them. They kind of give us that boost. Those actually would kind of eject off. They came back. We actually collected them, reused them many, many times. The external tank itself burned up in the atmosphere just because we had to hold on to it for a little longer. And the last component is SSME, Space Shuttle Main Engines, and those are at the bottom of the orbiter where a lot of that fire is coming from. And so that was kind of the parts of reusability. So every part of this space shuttle was reused except for the external tank. And something that I like to say, I am originally from Louisiana. The external tank was built in Louisiana, so we had the fine courtesy of building 135 amazing external tanks, whereas everyone else had to build, 6, 7 components that were constantly reused. So we had the amazing job of constantly rebuilding over and over and over again. So I guess you could say we got good at it. But for the most part, the Space Shuttle program was amazing. We made a lot of success, of course, building the International Space Station, which of course is still used today. We still have astronauts going to the International Space Station all the time. Now with SpaceX, which is a pretty interesting change and turn of events, no longer with the space shuttle, but really the idea of having somewhere to live and work in space, of course, learning more about how the body changes in space, but also being able to do so much science in space. And that's really the purpose of the space station. If we wanted to study a type of medicine, we could bring it to zero gravity and see how it changed. If we wanted to, do something that didn't kind of hinder or have the Earth's atmosphere in the way, we could bring it to the International Space Station. And it could be something where people from all over the world could come together, learn and work in space and kind of collaborate and do a lot of amazing work up there. So it was a huge success. To kind of give you an idea, the International Space Station is pretty much the size of an entire football field. It is a pretty massive, amazing facility that we have built up in space to be able to work and live and constantly send people. For a while in the US, after the Space Shuttle program ended, which the Space Shuttle program ended in 2011, the reason why it ended was because we wanted to turn our sights to the next goals of ours. But for a while, we had US astronauts going to the International Space Station using Soyuz, which was pretty much Russia's version of our space shuttle, what they were using to go to the International Space Station. station. And like I said, of course, now we have SpaceX, which has been absolutely amazing, sending us to space on that. But that has really been what we've been working on. And of course, we're still doing that today. But not only have we been sending people, there is a lot more to space than just people. So let's kind of look into that a little bit, talk a little bit about probes, rovers, and more, because of course, people in space is really, really important, but there is a lot more than that. So why don't you guys go ahead and type in humans have landed on the moon and docked to the International Space Station, but where else have man-made machines landed? So think about rovers, think about satellites, think about the probes. Where have we sent these things? You know, where have they gone? Because they have been a really large component of not only what NASA's done, but what space agencies around the world have been a part of. So let's see some of your responses. Some Marses. Yes, Mars, of course. Yes, let's see. Yeah, we have sent stuff out. Yep, Pluto, New Horizon, that was fairly recent. But yeah, a lot of really awesome responses coming in. Totally, we have sent stuff literally everywhere. So in our solar system, we have, of course, all of our planets, and we have sent stuff everywhere, to planets, to moons of other planets. We have even sent stuff to the sun, and we have done so much amazing work within our own solar system, actually. So of course, we have sent stuff to Mars. Perseverance, as you guys know, we have a new rover there. We have sent several rovers to Mars. Mars is quite the busy place. But yeah, we have sent a lot to Mars. But yeah, really just all over our entire solar system. We have continued to explore, you know, New Horizons, taking photos of Pluto, or studying the sun, or seeing what the moons of Jupiter are made of. You know, we've definitely been able to learn a lot through these robots and rovers, and it's been really, really cool. As you guys can see, you know, sending stuff to comets and asteroids and things like that. You know, the fact that we've landed on a comet is really amazing. That was a really cool mission. But yeah, we've really been able to explore different areas of space using different kinds of technologies. And of course, they all have different goals, but we're all really just learning more about what is happening around us, what different planets are made of. You know, of course, Mars has been pretty popular just because we're planning on sending humans there relatively soon. But yeah, a lot of really amazing research has gone into studying all the planets in our solar system and their moons, and even comets and things that are near us. And kind of what you guys saw a little bit there, but the Voyager kind of series satellites that we sent is one of my personal favorites, actually. I really enjoy the idea of Voyager. So we have sent Voyager 1 and 2. The whole idea about Voyager is actually contacting aliens a little bit. So pretty much what we did with Voyager 1 and 2 is we just sent them. We launched them. They are floating through space. They are still floating through space. They have left our solar system, so they are well past Pluto by now. And they are constantly sending information back to us to kind of help us see a little bit like deeper in space. Of course, it takes a while for us to get those photos now because they are so far away. But the really cool part about them is that they have these discs on them, and there's a kind of very simplified instruction manual on how you would play the disc or listen to the disc, and it has sounds of Earth. So it will have, you know, sounds of like a baby crying, or sounds of like a whale in the ocean, and pretty much it's just trying to give a snippet of what Earth is like, you know, what we're like. So pretty much what Voyager 1 and 2 is about is, you know, of course, we're being able to learn more about universe in general, but also if some alien species somewhere ever finds it, hopefully they'd be able to know a little bit about Earth and about where this came from, and maybe find us. Who knows? It's pretty cool that it's out there somewhere, just with all of the sounds and cool parts about Earth. And it's really amazing that it's been so successful so far. But yeah, really, satellites and rovers and things like that have been immensely successful. Of course, it's always safer to send a rover or whatever to another planet than sending a person, just because, you know, it's machines and they're able to do amazing work. So of course, the different rovers that we have right now on Mars, they're learning a lot of amazing things. You know, Curiosity found water on Mars, confirmed that there was water on Mars. Perseverance is now looking for life in the water that we have found on Mars, kind of testing some of those areas. But the biggest reason why we also want to use humans in space and not only rovers is because of how slow rovers and satellites can be. So obviously it takes a while to travel through our solar system, but not even just the time to get there, the time to literally function a rover on Mars. It may sound easy, but it really is not. So really with Mars, there's actually a time difference and a time delay. So sometimes Mars is close to us, sometimes Mars is really, really far from us. And so that means that there is really a time delay. And so on average, it's about 15 minutes. And so when I say that, you know, if I wanted to tell Perseverance, who's doing amazing work on Mars, tell it to move forward 2 feet. In about 15 minutes from now, it would be able to hear that it wants me, or I want it to move forward 2 feet. And so it would do that task, move forward 2 feet, and then it would send back, yay, I did that. And so in another 15 minutes, I'd be like, awesome, we successfully did that. So in about half an hour, we've barely moved forward. And so that's really why rovers are so slow when it comes to space, is because it takes so much time to actually get things done. Rovers can't think for themselves. They have to be told every itty bitty thing to do. Of course, we're going to do amazing success with rovers. It just takes time. And that's why typically it takes a while before we learn something new, or why it may take a little while before Perseverance finds something. And so that has been some of the amazing work that we've done with the rovers. But humans is really the next story, because humans are able to do that work so much faster. And they're able to look, we can think for our own, we can figure things out. So we're able to go to Mars, and that is really our goal. You know, you guys are totally a part of all of that, and you guys will be able to, you know, be involved and maybe even work for, you know, our plans with going to Mars. You know, we of course have the idea of going back to the moon, but after that we are going to Mars. And so if that interests you at all, it is totally something that will happen in our generation. I love saying that we are the Mars generation, because I truly believe we are going to be able to be on that mission, maybe working in the space industry, maybe be a part of it, maybe just be alive to watch it, but we will be able to watch humans land on Mars. So my best advice to you guys is really to follow your dreams and never let anyone take your dreams away from you. If you want to be on that mission to Mars, come join me. I would love the help. But yeah, really just go after whatever it is you want to do, because we will get there and we will do amazing things in space.
All right, Alyssa, huge thank you. And we've got a couple instructions for everyone now. That was a lot of space history in less than 40 minutes. And so I'm glad it was human controlled and not rover controlled, or that would have taken that much longer. Hey, I know I mentioned at the beginning, everyone to have a camera nearby. And remember, camera phones came from the space program because we needed to be able to take pictures and send them digitally back to Earth for all these different rovers and, you know, Mars missions and our moon missions and things. So use that piece of space technology, get that out, because in a second, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to lean into the screen, take a picture with Alyssa. And if you upload that to Instagram, tag Alyssa Carson, tag Varsity Tutors, you'll be entered to win a spot in Varsity Tutor Space Camp this summer and a telescope. Not quite the Hubble, but it's pretty close. It's pretty cool to be able to start exploring all those far away planets, moons, comets, lands, all those things for yourself. So with all that said, hopefully I've given you enough time to log into that state-of-the-art digital camera. And let me turn it back to you, and let's get everybody those pictures.
Yeah, everyone, come in, take a picture, smile. We are the Mars generation.
All right. Hopefully everybody got great pictures. If you didn't get the exact one you wanted, Alyssa smiles when she talks about space. You can get some amazing pictures. She'll be back on full screen while she's answering some of your questions. And you guys have had some really amazing ones. One really common one, Alyssa, is, as you know, talking, everybody's excited to be part of the Mars generation. They know, Artemis is going to take, at least a few of us back to the moon, but Mars is what everybody has their sights on. So when it comes down to all the different places in the solar system, Venus has atmosphere like we do, and is even a little bit closer. And, there are all kinds of, there's moons and all those kind of things. Why have we chosen Mars as the place that we think we may even, if we're going to build a new civilization somewhere, why are we talking about Mars specifically?
Yeah, it's such a great and valid question. Really, Mars is the next closest place we really can go. Of course, yes, we have Venus on the other side of us. Venus is the hottest planet in our solar system, which adds a whole lot of new challenges. It's full of greenhouse gases, kind of dangerous. Mars is a little bit more chill, a little calmer, but really there is a lot of benefits with Mars. We see a lot of similarities between Earth and Mars. We've already found water on Mars, and really for us, water is the base of life, and it's kind of where we think we can use that to really build something with Mars. So we have a lot of amazing ideas, whether that's colonizing Mars, terraforming Mars, maybe even making Mars more of a second home. But really, we see Mars as an opportunity to give back to future generations. If we could be living on Mars, that would be more resources, that would be more space. Let's say population continues to rise. We have a lot of opportunity with Mars. And then also a lot of the problems that we face right now with getting to Mars definitely relates to a lot of the problems we have now with Earth. So as we are solving these problems to getting to Mars, we are actually solving a lot of our Earth problems as well. So we're able to do both of those simultaneously while also saying that we're going to Mars, which is pretty cool. But really, there's a lot of benefits that always come back to Earth, like we've seen with all the different technologies. Everything we do in space comes back. So all the amazing things that we'll do with Mars, all of that is constantly all going to be coming back here to Earth.
Nice, thank you. It's crazy that it's pretty different from Earth, but then you see those Perseverance photos and it's like, that looks kind of familiar. So it seems like it won't be a terrible place to try to make a new home. It seems like there's, we'll feel at least somewhat comfortable. Hey, the Voyager, talk about Voyager and sending messages out to alien. You could see people typing pretty quickly, especially when you're like, we'll let them know we're here. And some people were saying, no, don't do that. So a lot of people wanted to know, do you believe in aliens? Why or why not? And if you do you think we'll make contact with them in our lifetimes?
Yeah, so actually my major, what I'm studying is astrobiology, which a lot of people jump to think that I study aliens. It's a part of astrobiology, not the direct path that I am working towards. But yeah, I definitely think in general that there is intelligent life somewhere else. The universe is so incredibly big and even bigger than we know of. And so pretty much I just think that there has to be something somewhere. Of course, that can be, light years and light years away, very, very far. But I do think that there is something somewhere. I also think that Mars has really good potential for having some sort of life on it. When I say life, I'm not talking about little green men walking around. I don't think we're going to find that on Mars. But I do think that there's a pretty big chance that we have little microbes, bacteria living in the steam that's on Mars, living in the water that's on Mars. There's just so much potential there. And we really want to learn a little bit more about that. So close to us, I think there's little bacterias. Intelligent life, I think they're somewhere. Don't know if they're close to us yet. That's, I guess, kind of up for question.
Nice. That's good insight and even more exciting reason to go to Mars, that we may find something we've never seen before, and then like you said, it's resources, it's something we can learn from. So that's fantastic. Hey, a couple more, just looking down my notes here. I guess the other biggest one people have is you were someone who not that long ago was the ages that a lot of these kids are here, elementary, middle school, wanted to go to space, and you're putting some, a lot of work behind really making it happen. So the most popular question is, how do you become an astronaut? What should kids who are 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, whatever, or anything in between, what should kids be thinking about if they also want to be astronauts? And I realize as I ask you this, I'm kind of asking you to give a little bit of insight to your competition. So thank you in advance for being so generous.
Yeah, totally. So really the first thing to remember is an astronaut really isn't a job. So you have to have a job to apply as an astronaut. An astronaut is more of like a destination. So really the first step is figuring out what it is you're interested in. So really the requirements to apply to potentially be an astronaut is really a master's and some sort of degree, some work experience, and then making sure you're healthy and fit to go to space. And that's really it. What else you do beyond that is totally up to you. And that's really the cool part about being an astronaut, is because you could be a pilot, you could be a doctor, you could be any sort of scientist, you could study any sort of science, engineering, math, really anything that you want, and then see how that applies to space. And so for me, I was kind of always more interested in like the research, the science, and being able to apply that to space. That's how I ended up in astrobiology and the path I am now. But really, the first step is figuring out what it is you're interested in, and how that can apply to space, and start working towards that dream first. Have astronaut in the back of your mind. You will get there. You will have the opportunity to apply, but really focus on what it is you want to do. And you want to do that job just as badly as you want to be an astronaut. So try to find something you really, really love. Also look for opportunities in your local area. They don't have to be big. Even things at school, if you maybe want to do space robotics, joining a robotics club at school is really, really helpful to get you started. And the biggest thing is talk about your dreams and tell people what you want to do. You never know where opportunities are going to come from. You never know who somebody else knows. And really, you never know what could happen. So tell people about your dreams and your goals. I know within the space and science community, we always want more of you to come and join. We're excited for more people to be excited about space. If you tell someone you want to work in the industry, we're going to give you our best advice possible, so that way you're able to come and join as well.
That's perfect. And I love that advice. Like you said multiple times, so much of the space program is we're going up there so we can do other science projects. We can learn about how plants might grow, in zero gravity or low gravity or on Mars, or, the medicine of how our bodies adapt and all those kind of things. So, going to space is about a love for science. So whatever science classes you're in right now, enjoy those, work hard in those, find what gets you excited. And there will be a space for that type of science coming up in space. So last one for you. You talked about so many incredible astronauts and space missions and those kind of things. What's your favorite? Who's your favorite astronaut, or what is your favorite mission that most people haven't really heard of? Everybody knows Neil Armstrong and the Apollo missions and all those kind of things. Can you tell us about one that we really ought to know about, but most people don't?
Yeah, that's such a fun question. Definitely, I've met so many amazing astronauts. I will say one of my favorite astronauts is for sure Story Musgrave. He was a shuttle astronaut. And really one of the reasons why he was my favorite was because he is absolutely insane. One of the craziest people I have ever met. He is now like in his 80s or 90s. He still like climbs trees, cuts trees. He does all sorts of crazy stuff. But one of my, I guess, going a little bit along with favorite missions that involved him. So he, of course, was on the space shuttle program. We did a whole bunch of science. One of the things that they did was they actually sent like rats to space. And knowing NASA knew Story was a little crazy, they knew that he would let the rats out because that's just something he would do. And so what they ended up having to do was they had to put, I think it was like 6 locks on the cage with the rats. The rats were just like some sort of experiment. They came back home. No, don't worry about the rats. They were good. But they had to put so many locks on the cage that he wouldn't be able to break, just to keep him from like letting rats free all over the space shuttle, because he was just that crazy of a man. And his like attitude towards space was always so fun. So definitely, if you want to look him up, he's a pretty fun one. Any of his missions, he probably did something crazy. So
I love that too, because that just goes to show you don't have to be, the perfect 4.0 student, live, like everything by the book. Space is all about, it's that new exploration and having, a little bit of, spunk and spirit in you of, I'm going to go out and try new things. And, it's the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dare mighty things is the slogan. So that's fantastic. Hey, Alyssa, huge thanks to you. I know you're coming back probably a little bit later in the spring to talk about the future of space travel and some of the upcoming missions and things. So, history was a lot to talk about, but there's way more future of space travel in front of us than there is history behind us. So we're excited to have you back. For everyone else, if I'm going to put up the instructions here to win the contest here. So if you've got those space selfies with Alyssa, if you put them up on Instagram and tag these accounts, NASA Blueberry and Varsity Tutors, you'll be entered to win. If you're interested in learning more about Space Club, we've got sections starting all the time. Take a look at the link on your screen. Space Club during the school year, and then we've got space camps in the summer. So check out that link. If you don't win, you can still get involved in that link on your screen right now. We'll tell you everything you need to know. We've obviously got plenty of exciting classes coming up here. So we'll see a lot of you here back really, really soon. And in the meantime, and in the spirit of space exploration, studying science, I know Alyssa mentioned before class, she has to pick out her fall semester classes. So Alyssa, thanks for making time and for all of your insight and everything, and everybody else. We'll see you back here soon.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging, and hopefully you learned a little bit about space history, and thanks for the amazing questions as well. So thank you guys.